And it's not easy. So what made you decide like you want to go the real estate route? You can say as an investor and then as like an actual agent.
Gotcha. So I think what started it was I was buying my first home and I was, in it, getting ready to buy my second one. And I was like, you know what, if I want to rent this out, it makes sense for me to be a licensed agent, whether if I'm, actively doing stuff or not, just to have that background, that knowledge if I want to, rent it out to other people. So I got my license, and then after that, I bought my third home, and I slowly tried to get into it, but I was still active duty at that time, and trying to be active duty and do real estate, it doesn't really work out.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah, so then, I got out, and I did have a full-time job and trying to pick up real estate. Things have picked up, which is great, and now I'm in my fourth home in Alexandria. So those other 3 homes on Virginia Beach, I just rent out, and they're doing great. So.
That's awesome.
Passive income.
Passive income, of course, and I use my VA loan because I'm a veteran for most of them. One of them was a conventional, which is different. There's different types of loans out there, but yeah, it worked out for sure. I'm glad I made those decisions. At the time, I think people were telling me, you shouldn't do it, and you're wasting your money, or even you're getting ahead of yourself. But I'm 100% glad I made that decision. So
in our last episode, we talked a lot about risk taking, and how a lot of people, when they get that itch or that hunch to do something, a lot of people will either deflect it or seek advice of other people's for affirmation that they should do it, which isn't a bad thing, right? If you have like mentors or people that have knowledge in that field, like you should definitely leverage that. But you actually did it, right? And you're seeing the ROI from that. So what type of pushback did you get when you were kind of like, all right, not only do I want to be like an investor, but like I want to actually become like an actual agent and help people? Because I'm sure you have people saying, well, you have 2 kids, you're doing this, you're doing that, like you're not going to be able to handle it.
Actually, I really didn't get much pushback on being a realtor. Just because I, was able to organize everything, I always had a sitter that I could call on, so I really didn't get much pushback. And sometimes I bring my kids to my showings, but of course these are with clients that have already, I know who they are and everything, and I have their permission. So I didn't really get much pushback, negative pushback on that. Actually, more welcoming, like, especially if I brought my oldest, my 7-year-old's like this, like, salesperson, She's like, oh my goodness, look at this kitchen. And I'm like, oh wow, that's so exaggerated.
This is a 7-year-old?
Yeah, this is a 7-year-old. Or she's like, I
early.
love how these staircases go up. And I'm like, oh geez. But the clients love it, because they see that's who you are, that's part of your lifestyle, so they see it, and they love the innocence of it. They know that you're not exaggerating. It's just
you're
just
not using her as like a prop.
Yeah, it's just like kids being kids.
Yeah.
So it's good. I like it. I enjoy it.
I did have a question. Like, when were you first introduced to like real estate? Like, was that something like maybe that was passed on from like your parents, or like what would you say was like your first like lesson, or I don't know, maybe you can reflect on when you thought, man, maybe real estate is something I should get into? Was that like in college or post college?
Honestly,
what was that like?
So it was in 2017. I was working with somebody who was, I was still active duty, and he was a realtor, and he was transitioning out. And he was like, why aren't you, using your VA loan? And I didn't even know this. I was like, what is that? And I said, what does this mean? So they started, and I had other people start explaining to me. I'm like, wow, this is actually a really good idea. I should do this. Can I even qualify? And then I started taking the steps to do it. And, I ended up qualifying. I found a house and I bought it. It was, there was really no big thing that happened, that, like, because even my parents were against it, buying multiple houses, because it's very risky. My parents are more conservative. But it kind of just happened. Now, since then, I've learned some major lessons, right? In trying to find that balance of being a good business person, but also ethical and keeping your moral values can be extremely hard. And there's just like this fine line that you have to balance on. Because especially as a landlord, right? I mean, even it happens as an agent, but even as a landlord, you know, where you hear these really sad stories and you just want to help.
Right.
But at the same time, you're like, okay, where do I draw the line?
Yeah.
You know, so it can be difficult. And I'm still learning my boundaries. I'm still learning how to kind of walk that line. But, you know, I'm very grateful that I'm surrounded by people who I can call on and like, hey, does this sound like I'm getting played?
Yeah.
Am I getting played right now?
What you want? I'm making moves, punching in. I'm on it too. I'm in the gym. I'm in the stew. It's hunting season. Where's the food?